Good morning, friends. Thanks for being here today. As we begin, let's begin with just having a bit of a pause, just a few moments to bring our attention and our awareness down into our bodies. And we do that most easily with just a few breaths. Let's invite the bell, and we'll have 3 breaths together, breathing in through the nose to the bottom of the belly. And as we breathe out, we want to release the breath entirely. So 3 focused and intentional breaths, deep and calm. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and let it all go. All right, friends. So this morning, I was thinking about those 3 breaths and how often it is I see in group situations, especially, that there are many of us that when we come with a certain amount of resistance to fully embracing the practices. And it's understandable. It's completely understandable why that would be. For many of us, the thing that brings us into these practices is that we are already becoming aware that we have wounding, we have been harmed or have injuries at some point in our life. And it gets to a point where those wounds begin to dictate the way that we experience our days. And so we start to seek. We become seekers. And this is a really great place to be, is to be seeking. because there's opportunities in doing that for honesty and for um, recognizing our own strength. Um, Strength that maybe we had a difficult time believing that we have had up to this point. So I was thinking about those 3 breaths and recognizing even how much it can take for someone to simply release their resistance and participate in these practices of health and vulnerability and healing, because um, there's a belief that it was our vulnerability that allowed us to be harmed. And so we become closed and protected, really protective of ourselves. But what can happen, that I found in myself to be true, is that we can begin protecting injury and protecting wounds in a way that doesn't allow for them to heal. And we protect our injuredness. We begin to protect our identity of pain, the way that we identify with our pain. And I witness it somewhat often, actually, that people will avoid those 3 breaths. They'll participate in every aspect of the meditation and read the books and do the workbooks and all of these different aspects of the ways that we seek out peace. I think that's mostly what we're seeking, is peace. But when it comes to those breaths, there's this resistance. Oftentimes it's a belief that there's no way that 3 breaths are going to make any difference in my day. Give it up, dude. Sometimes there's a sense of claiming agency that says, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. All of these places. But I think this morning, as I was thinking about with myself and how long it was that it took for me to actually surrender into these practices, even with doing them, it took quite some time. It took quite some time before I was able to even take 3 breaths in a row with my awareness being present. And even still, some days I try to take 3 breaths, and by the middle of the 2nd breath, my mind is on 300 different things. And I just have to keep coming back. But I remembered the teachings, some of which I've used the language of in Journey Home meditation in years past, of take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Dharma, and take refuge in the Sangha. And so I revisited those teachings this morning, and I was listening to a trusted teacher really expound upon what that means. And I was finding that in my seeking to better understand what it does mean to take refuge, I was already beginning to take refuge. In even the first steps of beginning to bring my awareness to my breath, I'm already practicing awareness. And that might look insignificant at first. It might look insignificant that I would do these little tiny things amongst the pressures of a very big world. But it is those little tiny things that do end up making the biggest difference. Have you sat under 100-year-old oak tree in the summer? Have you sat in its shade and felt the coolness of the bark? And have you swung from a branch or hung a hammock and felt that tree holding you and giving you that space, and that to remember that tree came from a seed that was able to be carried in the mouth of a chipmunk. One of the smallest creatures among us can carry this seed that contains this tree. That's a big deal. From a little thing. In the Christian Bible, it talks about if you even have the faith of a mustard seed, if your faith is the size of a mustard seed. I lived for some time in the mountains of Southern Oregon, and we lived in teepees, and it was a wonderful, wonderful way to live, wonderful place, wonderful time in my life, and I'm ever grateful for all of the refuge that I've received from the earth. And one of the things that was there was wild mustard. We had a few different wild mustard plants that would grow. I mean, thousands of plants, but a few different types of wild mustard. And this is a great plant because it provides so much. There's edible leaves. You can utilize the root system, and the seeds, of course. The seeds are where we get the condiment mustard. So crushing these seeds, they're quite powerful. These little tiny seeds, there's some of the mustard strains that are, you bite into one seed and your body temperature goes up because of the heat created from that one seed. But I think as I read that passage in the Bible, as I understand that teaching of that scripture to have faith of a mustard seed, I think it's often taught to have even just a little bit of faith and you'll be okay. But I don't know if that's exactly what it's intended to mean. Just like take refuge in the Buddha, when we talk about that teaching, I wasn't sure this morning what it meant to take refuge, because it seemed to me like I was hearing, when I heard take refuge, hide behind. And I think that maybe that's what a lot of folks these days seem to hear or embody. When they do spiritual practices, they hide behind their spiritual teachings. They hide behind the practice. They hide behind the identities or the idea of what it is to have this practice. But revisiting that teaching of to take refuge, it doesn't mean to hide. It means to come in from the storm of your mind, come in from the storm of your belief, and allow yourself to be present with the truth of what it is to be in this practice. When the teachings say to take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Dharma and take refuge in the Sangha. It's saying to understand, to take refuge in the Buddha is to understand the Buddha nature, that each of us have within us this capacity for what some people have called enlightenment. But what enlightenment really means, I think, in these teachings, the more I read, the more I understand enlightenment is simply compassion. It's simply finding understanding, true understanding. And each of us have the capacity to do that. And taking refuge in the Buddha means to have a knowledge that this exists within myself and it exists within each person that I encounter. So in any moment when I'm encountering a person, there is a possibility there. There is the seed there for a compassionate union, compassionate understanding. And the Buddha, as the person, as the teacher, taught us that. But what the Buddha taught wasn't that it's about themselves. It's the teaching is that it's about the Buddha nature, the nature of awakening. That's what the Buddha means, is the awakened one. So each of us have the capacity to awaken to our deeper compassion, to take refuge in the Dharma. The Dharma is the teachings that the Buddha gave, but it's also deeper than the teachings. It is the understanding of the way that this occurs, the way that we can come into our compassion and the way that we can come into our deeper union. Taking refuge in that means to understand that there is a path through this suffering. It's not a path away from suffering, and it's not a path around suffering, and it's not a path that, for $29 a month will get rid of your suffering. It's the way through, the path through this. And that's what it means to take refuge in the Dharma and the teachings. And then to take refuge in the Sangha. The Sangha is the collection of other people who are also seeking refuge. So take refuge in that you are not alone. Lean upon one another. Find those other people in your life that you can feel compassion from their heart. Maybe feel it through their words or through their eyes or through their actions. Or maybe you just feel a kinship in your seeking of this healing. But taking refuge in any of these things means to take that breath and surrender. And when we refer back to the teachings in the Bible of the mustard seed, I've seen the power of the mustard. I've seen the power of, this tiny little seed can spread so far so quickly. You can become so strong and so can live through so many different shifts and changes. The mustard survives the drought and it survives the winters, and it's a hardy plant. So the faith of a mustard seed is just simply the knowledge that this isn't it. You are a seed that is going to be larger. You are going to withstand these storms. And that's what I was thinking about this morning. So thanks for allowing me the space to share those thoughts, as so many of us are facing the storm right now. So many of us are right in it. Maybe you're in the eye of it where you're in a relatively calm place, and that's amazing. Maybe you're being battered by the winds of it, but wherever you are in that storm, the teachings that have come to us for so long is how to seek refuge. In whatever spiritual tradition it is that you find your teachers and your teachings, it's going to point back to the same thing. Um, with the faith of a mustard seed, you can surrender. You can surrender knowing, as I step into these 3 breaths right now, that I am in this place and I am okay right now. So let's do 3 breaths together. Let's remind ourselves of what it is to be grateful in this moment for these 3 breaths, to give our full attention and awareness into these breaths and into this body that carries us through so much. Breathing in. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for tending to that part of you and this part of me that sees each other. It's really empowering, I think. And let's come to our bell hooks today. We've been working through this Appalachian Elegy by bell hooks, poetry in place, for some time now, and we are coming through towards the last sort of breaths of this book. You can feel the shift in the timbre and the tone of the poems each day. So let's maybe take refuge in some bell hooks right now. Wow. So I want to say again, I'm not reading ahead in this book, and it's just amazing to me. I just love the shock and the surprise and the excitement that I receive when I start to read the poem for the day, and it's just so well aligned with the things that I'm experiencing and the things that we're talking about together. This is number 41. Fierce, unyielding winds, pressing, pushing against window glass, trees swaying, branches falling, chaos, warning of danger. She does not want to cut them down. She does not want to fear those mighty oaks, standing guard for more years than can be counted, strong roots sustaining life, holding back the rush of time. Let earth testify they have the right to fall when life comes to an end, to move in harmony with fate. That's almost too much. That's almost too much. It's almost too. Let's do it again. Fierce, unyielding winds pressing, pushing against window glass, trees swaying, branches falling, chaos, warning of danger. She does not want to cut them down. She does not want to fear those mighty oaks, standing guard for more years than can be counted, strong roots sustaining life, holding back the rush of time. Let earth testify they have the right to fall when life comes to an end, to move in harmony with fate. It's amazing. Yeah. It's pretty clear to me that bell hooks here is speaking towards the way that oftentimes our fear pushes us into and motivates us to take action that if we can just take those breaths and relax and seek that refuge, that we can allow things to happen in their time. Um, and now, of course, fear is a part of our experience to help bring awareness. Some people would say that fear is acute awareness of something in the moment, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. Um, Sometimes fear is an echo of a wounding from the past. Um, but here, Bell Hooks is reminding us that in this last lines, let earth testify they have the right to fall when life comes to an end, to move in harmony with fate. What does that mean to move in harmony with fate? What could that mean in our lives if we were to surrender, if we were to have that faith of a mustard seed, to understand that mighty oak? And this poem came from the smallest acorn in the mouth of a chipmunk. Like, what does that mean to move in harmony with fate? Um, we often confuse acceptance with permissiveness or condoning. That if I accept this terrible thing, then that means I'm giving it permission. I'm condoning it. But really, um, what does it mean to accept? It means to release my resistance and to be open to things that I may not even understand. But to say, hey, you know, this is what is right now. It is what it is right now. We don't have to immediately run to finding how this is the best or any of these things. We don't have to put silver linings on dark clouds. We can just be in the storm for a bit. The poet Wendell Berry told us that to go in the dark with a light is to know the light, but to know the dark, go dark. Go without sight. We can know even this. We can know even these difficult things. So thanks for being here this morning. Thanks for taking the time for this practice. Let's just have a few moments of quiet space. Let our mind and our bodies rest and relax down into this place, this right now. And in the tradition of some of my teachers, would end their practices anytime we sit. They end their practices reminding themselves and all of us to, when doing these practices, even when you're experiencing pain and difficulty or distress, to also remember that you are experiencing uh, your vastness, your largeness, your ability to grow and absorb these things, um, And that includes your happiness and your joy. And they would always remind at the end of the practice, as you're sitting in silence, taking a few breaths, to just allow, to not stand in the way of, to allow a smile to come to your face. I resisted it for years, literally years. I resisted doing that. I'm not going to smile if I'm not happy. And then I was telling that to a teacher once. I said, I don't want to smile if I'm not happy. And he said, how do you know if you can be happy if you're not going to smile? These clever monks, man. Clever monks. So let's try that today. If you can, the invitation there is to allow a smile to come to your face in the last of your practice as we close with just a few breaths together. And one more sounding of the bell. Thanks, friends. Maybe we'll all be here tomorrow.